Hello, my name is Mike Geig, and in this video we are going to be talking about the different file dialogues, which is part of my series on Windows programming with C#. At this point, we've seen how to write to files, we've seen how to read to files, and we saw pulling string paths with text boxes and hard coding and stuff like that. However, there are two dialogues built into C#.net and VB.net called the OpenFileDialog and the SaveFileDialog that become very useful for working basically with files. Okay, we can expect the user to type the path in, but that's a bit difficult, for someone to type in the full absolute path every time they need to access a file. It's much simpler for them to get prompted with an OpenFileDialog and to scroll through their file system and find it. They're very familiar with the OpenFileDialog, and it's easy for them to use. So we're going to look at potentially using that here, and we're going to kind of put some stuff together. So what I want to do is I'm going to make an application that's going to, basically function like a very basic text editor, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add two buttons, a label, and a text box here. All right, and the first things first, the text box is going to be a multi-line text box. We'll move the label down here. We'll move button 2 right there, button 1 we can put right there, and this text box will become bigger. Okay, and so let's work on some properties here. So this button will be btn open, and it will say open, and this will say save, and btn save. This will be we'll just call it actually, text box 1 is not too bad of a name in this case because it's not representing anything. It's mainly a work area. So in this label will be LBL path, and it's not going to say anything. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to prompt the user to open the file, prompt the user to save a file, and we want to be able to display the path and things like that. So to get these dialogues, I'm going to come over to my toolbox. I'm going to look for dialogues right here, and I'm going to choose a OpenFileDialog and a SaveFileDialog. I'll just double click on both like that. All right, and you notice they don't have a visual component. They come down here. Okay, so let's talk about saving. We'll talk about opening first. Okay, so we'll say open. All right, and when we want to open, we want to pop up that open file dialog. If you remember our discussion about dialogues way back when, we talked about how we don't want the user to be able to hit the red X or say cancel and still do things. So we basically need to make sure they say OK. So I want to do if OpenFileDialog1 dot show dialog. It's going to pop up. It is modal, so it'll freeze the rest of my application while it's up. And we want to say, okay, so if they show that, if the result is, I'm sorry, it popped up for me, and then I hit a button and it went away. System.windows.forms.dialogresult.OK. All right, so if they said OK to that, all right, then what I want to do is I do want to point out before I continue, I am reusing an application that I did before. System.io is already here. So if you start with a fresh application to follow along, you need to put this using System.io. I just noticed that I left it there from the previous video. So you do need using System.io. You'll have to type that in if it's not there. So my apologies for that. I normally like to start with a clean slate, and I missed that bit. But okay, so once they hit OK, that means they have selected a file to open. Okay, so it gets real simple then. We're just going to do a stream reader. And the nice thing here is that they've selected a file from the dialog, which means that file does exist. We don't need to test to see if it exists. It exists for sure, or else they wouldn't have been able to pick it. So we're going to do a new stream reader, and our path is going to be the OpenFileDialog.filename. Okay, it contains the absolute path already inside. Our work gets really easy with an OpenFileDialog. No asking, no typing, whatever. We just have the file name right there. Next thing I want to do is remember this LBL path. We want to output or have it say what the oops, I almost doing my reader, what the file they opened was. So we're going to use the file name there as well. And then finally, we are going to say textbox1.text equals myreader.read to end. And then, of course, we have to say myreader.close, which I believe in the previous video I forgot to do. So shame on me. Maybe it was there. I don't remember. If it wasn't there, it should have been there. And if it was there, then I knew it all along. Okay. And so when we run this here, let me go ahead and hit open. And you see here, I'm prompted actually right where I want to be. Remember the C drive, this test folder we created, the test file. That's the same from the last video. I haven't gotten rid of that. I will hit open, and we see the file here, and we see C:\test/test.txt. Great. So the OpenFileDialog, just lets us navigate around. Everyone's pretty familiar with this dialog. And then you can hit open, which is the equivalent of OK. All right. So now let's talk about saving. All right. Again, we can prompt the user to save using the save dialog to wherever we want. So I'll go ahead and hit save, double click on save, and what I'm going to type in is I'm going to say, again, they have to say OK. So if SaveFileDialog.showDialog equals system.windows4 dialog.result.OK. Yep. So if the user said OK, then what I want to do is I want to write to the file. So I'm going to say stream writer, myWriter equals new, and now I want to use this as basically kind of like a save as command or whatever. I want to get rid of whatever's already in that file. All right, so I'm going to say save file dialog, file name. I'm not going to put the true after this. I want to truncate that file. All right, your mileage may vary. You may want to do something different. I want to truncate that file. And so I'm going to say myWriter.write, and basically I'm going to write the entirety of textbox1.text. It's multi-line, so all the new lines and everything are already in there. I don't have to worry about formatting or anything like that. And then when I'm done, I close it. Okay, well, let's try it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it. And we'll hit open, and we'll come back here to the test.txt. We'll see all this stuff. I'm going to add some junk here. I'm going to get rid of line 2. And I'm going to say maybe virus detected or something. I don't really know. Okay, great. So we've modified this file. Now I'm going to save it. I'm going to hit save. And again, I'm going to select test.txt. I could save it as anything. All right. I could type in a file name here. For instance, if I did test2, and hit save, and it would save there. If I open now, you see there's test and test2, but I don't want to do that just yet. I'm going to delete that through the Explorer because I can, and I'm going to hit save. I'll save it as test. When I hit save, it's going to say, hey, it already exists. Look at this. Isn't this fantastic? All this built-in functionality. Say it's already exists. You sure you want to replace it? I'm going to say, yeah, I'm sure. Okay. And now I'll close the program, I'll run it again, I'll reopen that file, and look at that, all my changes are saved because I used the save dialog to override the previous file. Okay, so pretty neat stuff, alright? So dialogues make our job a lot simpler, but they're not mandatory. You don't have to have dialogues, though they do make things much, much simpler. Okay, so that's going to conclude my video on the dialogues. All right. Basically, we looked at the OpenFileDialog and the SaveFileDialog. We talked about the results briefly. Most of that stuff is a recap from our dialog discussion way back when. And we looked at how to use the file name to open and save documents.